All right, welcome everybody to another Getting Ready to Recover. It's a series that we're putting on of webinars by the DeKalb County Unites team. DeKalb County Unites, really quick, is just a group of individuals here in DeKalb County that have gotten together from Northern Illinois University, from elected officials, from local government to the nonprofits, and then the private sector businesses as well. We've all just kind of teamed together to see if we can gather as much information as possible to get it out to the small business community in order to make a positive economic impact on the small business community during this COVID-19 crisis. We have a website, DeKalbCountyUnites.com. I highly encourage everyone to go there, just get familiar with it. We're putting stuff up there, it seems like every day. We just keep adding more and more. In fact, we just added a lot of HR documentation there as well, because our webinar on Wednesday at 2 o'clock, we're gonna be talking a lot about unemployment and how to help guide your staff that you may have had to lay off during this time. Give them some ideas and some direction on where they need to go as well. All of our webinars are recorded. We are recording this one right now. You can go to our website and you'll see links to all of our previous webinars. Highly recommend you just kind of go through and take a look, because there's some great ideas in there, whether it was Open Door Coffee or Jeff Dovey from Fatty's and Bill McMahon from the Lincoln Inn. Just a lot of stuff that we can all act on. But today, it's my honor to bring back the dynamic duo of Mark Kerman and Frank Roberts. They are two local industry experts. Mark Kerman is an accountant with Siepert Co, and Frank Roberts is a banker from First National Bank of Omaha. We also asked for Jock Samizi to be able to come on. He's with the Small Business Development Center, and Jock is kind of an expert on all things. So if there's an answer we don't know, we're going to look to that man to give us a little clarity. Again, if you want to ask any questions, at the bottom of your screen, you're going to see a Q&A button. Just click on that, type in your question, and either we'll see it or Courtney will interrupt us to make sure those questions get answered. It is really important to us that we try and get every question answered today is our goal. This is the second week of doing this. The first week, it was an initial, hey, let's talk about PPP, but we had a lot of questions on it, and so we thought we would redo it again. I thought what we could kind of talk about and start kicking it off with would be just really briefly, anything from you, Mark, and anything from you, Frank, that you've learned and you want to share over the last week, or questions you might be getting asked a lot by either your clients or what you're hearing on the street. Anything that you'd like to share, we can take that opportunity, and if not, we've got plenty of questions that we can just jump right on in. So without further ado, I'll kick it off first with Mark. I don't know if you've got anything to share over the last 7 days since we met last.
I guess we're starting to get to the point to where we're hearing questions on what we should be tracking, what clients need to be tracking. Is there anything special they should do with respect to making sure that they maximize the loan forgiveness of these loans that they hopefully will be receiving. And to that end, I guess the emphasis that I'd like to make is I guess I'd recommend clients immediately start looking at and thinking about what expenses they have that qualify. So not just looking at payroll costs and what payroll cost means. Obviously, you'll have to know that in order to apply for the loan. But in addition, rent, utilities, phone, internet charges that you're incurring, mortgage interest, those costs that you expect to be paying over that 8-week period, start looking at and analyzing it. Do you have enough cost to be able to maximize the loan forgiveness? In other words, all 10 weeks worth that they're providing you of your payroll costs, and they're only looking at an 8-week window, do you have enough cost to be able to offset all of that? And if you don't, then start looking at and thinking about, well, let's make sure that we are optimizing it. So for the sake of discussion, and I think I mentioned this in the last webinar, but if you have a payroll that cuts off, if you pay every 2 weeks and it's cutting off midweek, issue that payroll. Get that money paid to your employees so that you have more funds that are qualifying for this purpose, okay? We want to make sure that we're paying things that qualify. For the sake of discussion, if you have a rent payment coming up, you can pay that in advance to make sure that type of expenditure that you would normally be incurring is qualified, and it gets you closer to more being part of the loan forgiveness. That's kind of the key that I guess I would want to stress and would want to make sure that people are thinking about as they start transitioning into having these loans be available to them.
Frank, before I get to you, boy, there's a lot in there, Mark. I'm almost overwhelmed just listening to everything you just brought up, and I like to think I'm relatively in the know here. So really quickly, just to 20,000 foot some things. One, we're referring to the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP program by the federal government, which allows you to apply for a loan through an authorized SBA 7A lender. And what that means is you look at and you can apply for 2.5 times your average payroll cost for the last 4 quarters. So what that means is
monthly, average monthly.
What's that?
Average monthly.
Sorry, yeah, if I didn't say it, then monthly. So if you look at your last year, let's say, of payroll, you divide that by 12, and that's the monthly cost that you come up with. But that includes, correct me if I'm wrong, health insurance premiums, contributions to your 401k. There's a few things that go into that you can roll into that calculation. So once you have that monthly calculation, you take that and multiply it by 2.5 times. And that's the overall loan that you can apply for with the federal government. If you're approved by the SBA and you receive it through your lender, then that'll be deposited in your bank account, and the interest rate on that loan will be 1%. The thing that makes this so important is there's a really good chance that up to 8 weeks of your payroll costs, and I'll get to the other things, payroll costs will be forgiven. So if you maintain your payroll, and there's all kinds of gotchas that we can get into here, and I'm sure we're gonna get a bunch of questions on it, but if you maintain your payroll through that time period, you can apply to have that payroll forgiven. But also, correct me if I'm wrong, part of that payroll is the health insurance and the 401k or simple IRA, all that can also be forgiven. But what's important is your rent as well can be calculated in that 8-week period. So your rent can be forgiven. Or if you happen to own the building, your interest rates or your interest that you're paying monthly can be forgiven as well. Not the principal, but the interest rates, which is great. And then also my understanding is any other debt that you might be paying interest on during that 8-week period, you can also roll that into what you can apply for being forgiven as well. So Mark, with what I just said, was there something else that I didn't cover in there that you want to make sure we get clear on?
I would say no. I don't believe you mentioned the utilities portion, so utilities also qualify.
Yeah, utilities qualify as well, right?
Yeah, and included in utilities are phone bills and internet costs as well, which oftentimes you don't associate with the utility.
It's a good point, especially being an IT provider. My internet costs are pretty substantial.
Cohen, may I add something there?
Absolutely, Jack.
But 75% of that money needs to be used for payroll.
Isn't it at least 75% of it has to be used for payroll?
Yes.
Yeah. So in theory, you could use 100% of it for payroll, Mark?
That's correct. And that's for loan forgiveness.
Yes.
That's for loan forgiveness. That's correct.
Yeah. So the 8-week period, let's say that 2.5 times calculation, easy math, let's say it was $200,000 that you applied for, but your 8-week payroll cost, utility costs, everything that we just talked about comes to $175,000. You might get $175,000 of it forgiven, but you're still going to owe the $25,000 back to the government. Now that $25,000, what's important is my understanding, and Frank, you can jump in here in just a sec. It is a 1% interest rate that you'll be charged on, so really low interest. But also there's no penalty for prepayment. So once the smoke all clears, the loan is forgiven and you know what that amount is, the remainder that you may not have consumed as part of that forgiveness portion, you can go ahead and just pay back to the government so you no longer accrue interest on that. Frank, how about you? What have you been hearing? I mean, you've been in the weeds as a banker for sure. Anything you wanted to share over the last 7 days that you think might be helpful here?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, good. Yeah, a couple of things. One, I would echo Jack's comment. The specifics, right now, I think the industry has general guidelines about how to think around the Paycheck Protection Program and the forgiveness component of it. It's my understanding the SBA has made a statement that there's more direction, more guidelines to come as it relates to how that component's going to work. the devil is always in the detail in these things. So I would concur with Mark on the forgiveness piece, and that is just really start thinking right now about making sure you very much understand kind of the deal. And I think Cohen did an excellent job recapping it, what the program is. And so be very, very well versed in the program. I mentioned before, there's what they call an interim final rule out there. It's a 31-page document. It's a good document to go through and to read. And just, again, start thinking about how are you going to present your request to your bank about how to get debt forgiveness associated with the program. Specifically, if I could transition back a little bit, again, you know, I'm not representing the bank. These are just comments by Frank Roberts, who's looked at a boatload of these applications. But surprisingly, the number of applications that need to be corrected have been higher than I would have thought. If you have and you'll see this if you have applied or want to apply, but there's a very specific form that's part of this Paycheck Protection Program. And at the bottom of the form on the left-hand side, it says SBA Form 2483. And the form you need to use is dated 4/20. There were forms out before that. If you use that, it's my understanding the SBA will not accept that form. So you need to use SBA Form 2483 dated 4/20. The other thing is make sure that you check the right boxes at the top. And these boxes are basically asking, are you a sole proprietor, a partnership, or a C Corp? Just make sure that if you're Inc., you know, you're typically checking C Corp or S Corp or what have you. The other thing, make sure that your average monthly payroll times 2.5 is the right number you put in there. It is not unusual to have the number times 2.5 not be the number in the box where it's saying this is how much I want to request. Numbers get transposed. You take a phone call, you come back, you just missed it, but make sure you do the math, and then make sure you provide all the applicant information that they ask for. Basically, they want a listing of any owner of more than 20%. So then the other piece at the bottom and of page 1 and page 2, there's a series of places you have to initial. Make sure and initial that. And a big miss on the applications is in questions 5 and 6. In the middle of the document is where you have to initial, and you're confirming your response on page 5 and 6. A lot of people are not seeing that because they're going to the right side of the page or the left side of the page, but on page 1 there's 5 and 6. And then just make sure and sign it, date it, put your title, and then type your name. The other thing on some of these forms, the font's pretty big, so you may have to shrink it down, but just make sure that everything you put in here is readable, the math works, make sure you're just fully compliant with all the requirements from the initials to the signature. Otherwise, it's going to get kicked out, and it's going to need to be the application will need to be corrected.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was one of those on SBA Form 2483, I think it was, that Frank was mentioning, and question number 5 and 6. You answered no to those questions, but then in the middle of the page, you're supposed to initial that you actually answered no, and I missed that one. I also hand walked another small business owner through it. He missed that as well. So I bet that's a very popular miss. So just make sure that you are paying attention on question 5 and 6. I do want to call out, and I forgot to do this right out of the beginning, if you haven't applied, you need to apply. So if you are a business under 500 people or a 501c3 under 500, you got to get your application in. And to do that, you need to reach out to your local lending institution. And your lender needs to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jock, but an SBA 7A approved lender, pre-approved. So, and my list may be inaccurate, so don't hold me to it, but I'm pretty sure locally, at least in DeKalb County, on the surrounding region, some banks that definitely are that right out of the gate are Resource Bank, First National Bank of Omaha, First Midwest Bank, First State Bank, and Heartland Bank and Trust. So there's a lot of banks already that you can reach out to that most likely a lot of you have already have a relationship with, but you need to reach out to them and file for the Paycheck Protection Program. Your lending officer should be able to help you with some of the documents that are required, but also your financial institution, your accountant. Like in my case, Siepert, Mark's my accountant. He was invaluable to getting the documents that I needed in order to prepare for my application. So you're going to have to lean on your lender. You're going to have to lean on your accountants to get the docs that you needed. Also, I don't know if Brian Oster is on the call, but Brian, if you could put in the question, the hours that you're going to be open, but Brian Oster of OC Creates and myself, we've come up with some office hours that we're going to have and offer to the small business community to allow people to be able to come in, because most of this is an online application. So you need to scan some documents into PDF form. You need to apply online. And both of our organizations, so I'm Cohen Barnes with Sundog, he's Brian with OC Creates. We're going to offer our offices up so you can bring in your documents, we can scan them for you, and we can help with the online application. My hours are going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays from 5 to 7, and you can reach out to me on my cell phone at 815-739-9001 and schedule a time. Please schedule it, don't just drop by. And then we can work on helping you get your application through. But I bet a lot of financial institutions will have some resources available for you as well. But we're just there just in case you need that additional assistance. We're happy to give it. So questions, Courtney, what do we got?
So part one of Lynette's, I believe, was answered, but she has two questions there. But her second question is, if an organization receives the $10,000 EIDL check and a PPP loan, does the EIDL amount get deducted from what you were able to receive in the PPP?
Frank, do you know that, or Mark?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Okay, well, that was an easy one. Let's hope another one is that easy.
Real quick, Courtney, though, the first part of her question, just to be clear, it's 2.5 times average monthly payroll for 2019 or last 4 quarters. Do you guys know?
Yeah, actually, so, and this was actually approached in the last webinar as well. So according to the CARES Act, it was written up as the rolling 12-month period. According to the application, it says 2019 wages. To that end, they're allowing, and you actually need to go by lender because your lender is going to be dictating this, but they are allowing either. For purposes of the SBA, they are allowing either 2019 wages or rolling 12-month wages. So either of them works, but it's going to be, it's generally going to be dictated by your lender and what they're setting up for their policies internally.
Excellent.
Okay, and then we have, going back to the PPP, Dave is asking, is insurance like AFLAC covered as essential?
I don't know that one.
I haven't had that specific question. It is a benefit that you're providing to your employees. If it's being covered by the employer, I would look into it and follow up with your lender to determine if they'll allow it. We found actually the lenders are very helpful in that case.
Hey, real quick, Courtney, just to call out. So Brian Oster with OC Creates, he is available Tuesdays and Thursdays from 10 to 4. So we're going to go ahead and post on DeKalbCountyUnites.com our office hours, we'll call them. And you can go ahead and look on there, find the contact information in order to schedule your appointment. If you need help scanning and submitting your PPP application, but by all means, remember, we are not financial experts. We are not accountants. We are not bankers. We're just a couple tech guys with some scanners and an internet connection that can try and make this a little bit easier for you. All right, what else we got, Courtney?
Okay, so we have been approved for the PPP, but does it make sense for us to apply for the EIDL program?
So I'm going with apply for both. Jock, what do you think?
You know, my philosophy was apply for everything every time.
Because in no way does applying for both disqualify you from one or the other.
Does not, nor from the state program either. And, you know, Cohen made this point early on when he heard me say this 1,000 times. You do not have to accept the money. You know, you're going to the bank for the PPP. You could say, no, I don't want to do this. So you still have that right and choice, but absolutely apply for everything.
So there's a few questions about banks and hearing back from the banks. I don't want to call out any specific bank right now, but somebody said that they did put in 2 registrations. They haven't heard anything back. They were thinking about moving to a different bank. Should they do that if they haven't heard anything by now?
I don't want to speak for the bank, but the whole fraud issue with these loans is really being looked at closely by the SBA. So if there's duplicates, that slows the whole process down. That being said, the banks did not have a lot of direction on this from the SBA. I just saw a stat that said less than 0.5% of the EIDL is being funded. 2% has been funded so far. So I know this doesn't make you feel better, but misery loves company, and there's a lot of company out there. So it's really not the bank's fault. Do I suggest going to another bank? If you have a relationship with the bank, that's what's really the most important thing.
Yeah, because realize there's a lot of banks out there that aren't taking new applications with applicants that don't already bank and have a business account already set up with them. So the options are probably pretty narrowed at this point, being able to move. Just so you know, I personally know throughout the nation as part of my peer group, there are some people that have actually been funded in their bank accounts at this point that I personally know. Others, like myself, have received from their financial institutions that they have an SBA approved number, that the loan documents are being drawn up, and in a matter of days, I should have the DocuSign documents in my inbox that I could sign. And then in theory, I should be able to be funded fully after that. So we're seeing more movement out there, whether it's funds all the way in someone's account to banks have acknowledged SBA approval and they're getting loan documents drawn up. So I would, and the advice that was given to me is this is your livelihood. You have people on the hook here. There's that old adage of a squeaky wheel gets the grease. And I know, Frank, you don't want to hear this, but this is too important to so many of us. If you're not getting any answers back from your bank, I would elevate and escalate in order to get some sort of dialogue. Even if it is we got your application and we still don't know yet. At least you know they've received it and things are good. So I would definitely keep pushing until you get some sort of an answer, even if the answer is, I don't know.
Frank, aren't you mandated to disperse within a certain amount of time?
Yeah, excuse me, it's my understanding for the reg, the banks have to disperse within 10 days of receiving the SBA number.
Is that 10 working days or?
Yeah, we asked that question this morning and I didn't get the answer.
No,
I don't know whether it's count.
Anyway.
Pardon me?
The answer will change anyway. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Lynette has a follow-up question to her other one. What happens if the PPP amount is lower than the $10,000 EIDL? Can we accept the EIDL and not the PPP?
Jock, I'm going to look to you on that one. I would assume yes.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You don't have to take it if you don't want.
Yep. And really cross that bridge when you've got both funded in your account. That's when I'd worry about it for sure. And for all of you that know, on our website, Jock, do we have your contact information on our website? We do, don't we?
Courtney doesn't like me, so I don't know if she put that on there.
So we will make sure to get Jock's contact information on our website from the SBDC. So as we get further down the road, if you're not able to get the question, we'll make that connection for you. But also on DeKalbCountyUnites.com, we have a contact us form. Fill it out, ask any question that you want. And we have obviously the right people that we can reach out to and get those answers for you. What else we got, Courtney?
Can I interject for 1 second?
Yeah.
And I don't know, once the wheels are in motion with respect to that $10,000 grant, I don't know that that can be stopped, whether that process can be stopped. However, I will say, if you have a choice between $10,000 from the EIDL program or $10,000 coming from PPP, I would take the PPP. And the reason I would take the PPP, the reason I would take the PPP is because that can be forgiven, and in addition to it being forgiven, it's not considered taxable income. Whereas the $10,000 grant that comes from the EIDL program is immediately forgiven, but it's considered taxable income to you.
But Mark, to understand that, like, I understood the 10,000 being it's yours, that's it.
Yeah.
There's no, right. So where PPP, there's going to be a verification process later.
That's true.
That there could be some, maybe there's a little ambiguity on exactly what's going to be covered. So I think the jury may still be out on that one too, but I totally get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think each individual is going to make that decision.
Sure. I think it's worth noting though that there is definitely a difference with respect to the taxability of that money.
Absolutely. Very good point. Very good point.
And that grant is up to $10,000.
Yep.
Yeah, that's correct.
But now they've limited to $1,000 per employee. So,
Oh, I did not know that.
yes,
Huh.
no little wrinkle last week.
On funds that still aren't dispersed.
That is correct.
What else we got,
And
Courtney?
just to clarify, we do have the Labonte SBDC information on our website under
Beautiful. Thank
resources.
you. Thank you.
So they could track Jacques down.
One other thing, Courtney, there's a great video from Inc. magazine that I think will be up on our website.
Yeah.
And it talks about the requirements for the PPP. You may want to take a look at that and just make sure that you're going to be able to match what they're asking for at the end of the day. I know that's not a priority right now because we're waiting for the funds, but when they do come in, you want to make sure that you have the detail on where that's going. And Mark, as an accountant, will tell you that you should be doing that with everything that you bring in, but especially with the PPP.
Okay, so Roy Plody is asking, self-employed wages farmers are supposed to be eligible. How do we figure 2.5 for payroll?
Okay, can I field this one?
It's all yours, Mark.
All right, so first of all, I want to clarify that what he's actually asking is with only respect to him, not to any employees that he has. If he has employees, shucks, that's easy. It's the same method that everyone else uses. If he's talking about himself specifically, then the key is it's based on his net income from farming operations. If his net income is less than $100,000, then we would take that net income figure, divide it by 12, and multiply it by 2.5, just like you would with respect to any other payroll that you're issuing to a client or to an employee. If it's greater than 100,000, then it stops at that 100,000 figure. You divide by 12, multiply by 2.5. That does not include, if he has to pay health insurance for himself, he can add that on top. Any retirement plans that he funds on his own behalf. So the key there is anybody that's self-employed, whether you're a farmer, whether you're a sole proprietor, small business owner, you take your net income from business operations, and that's the number that you're using. Divide by 12, multiply by 2.5.
Awesome.
He just asked, do you add the back depreciation?
EBITDA. Yeah, is it EBITDA or net profit, Mark?
Net income. Net income.
So that's after depreciation.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then someone asked, does anyone know the loan terms in years for the EIDL and PPP payback?
Jock, you know that off the top of your head, or Frank?
Yeah, PPP, I believe, is 2 years. Let me just double check that.
Yeah, I think Mark's nodding his head too.
Yeah, it's 2 years, and the first 6 months can be deferred with a potential of a full year deferment. But generally speaking, it's 2 years with a 6-month deferral of payments to the PPP.
EIDL is up to 30 years. I don't know.
No, the PPP is 2 years. The EIDL is 30 years.
Yes.
Yep. That's a good point, Frank. You mentioned that interest will be deferred, but it will continue to accrue. So those of us that really hate and don't pay attention to accounting, defer means you still owe. You just don't have to pay it now. So you got to judge we all want to hoard cash right now. We want to protect cash as much as possible, but know that that bill is still going to come due at some point for sure.
Okay, Sherry said she didn't initial 5 and 6. Can they resubmit just that page, or do they have to resubmit the whole thing?
I would resubmit the whole thing. I'm a big believer, especially with federal documents like that. Just reprint out the document, fill it out, scan it in, send it back to your lender, and let your lender know, hey, I applied. Hey, my SBA Form 4283, I probably have that wrong. 2483, sorry, SBA Form 2483 was incorrect, and here's my new one.
Okay, and Dana asked, when is self-employed going to start getting unemployment? Anyone?
I don't know. Do you know, Jack?
Wednesday for that answer.
I was going to say that may be a better question for Wednesday's HR. So Dana, hopefully you will rejoin us on Wednesday.
Yeah, because real quick, the webinar on Wednesday, we're going to have representatives from the Illinois Department of Employment Security on that should have a wealth of knowledge. I mean, listening to some of them talk, we're gonna be able to get every question like that answered, I would imagine.
And they've gotten some clarification. Last week they didn't have as much clarification as they will by Wednesday.
Dave said, I expanded my workforce within the last 3 months. So what is the consideration there? I think he's asking about the PPP, right?
Yep. So my understanding, I'll give it a shot since Mark hesitated. I didn't hear Frank chime in. Ultimately, what you're going to be forgiven is your payroll for that 8-week period, whatever the size of it is. So the loan amount that you applied for was based off of the average monthly payroll cost in 2019, let's say, or rolling 4 quarters, but the average monthly cost, and it was 2.5 times that, to factor in rent and some other things in that loan amount. But if your payroll is actually larger, there's a good chance that you may consume the whole 2.5 times amount just with your payroll alone. And ultimately that is okay and that is forgiven, is my understanding.
Okay, then we have
Mark's nodding his head.
Kind
of, tentatively.
Okay, I saw his response. All right, we're good. You answered.
Hey, Cohen.
Yes, Frank.
Cohen, can I do 2 things really quick? Number one is I want to be crystal clear about this, and I know that the language kind of gets interwoven, but your rent and your interest costs and your utility costs are not part of your calculation. Correct. The only part of the calculation is qualified or covered payroll expenses. And I see that quite a bit is just in the language of how people are using it. You can use it to cover those costs, but at the end, I think Jack mentioned this earlier, 75% of your proceeds need to go to cover payroll. The other 25% can cover payroll, but can also be used to cover utility and rent, stuff like that. So I just want to be really clear that this is being driven almost solely by payroll and payroll related, not operational costs such as rent. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind as we're going through and thinking about the calculation, how the proceeds get used, and how to make sure they get used in a way and documented in a way to be able to go in and to request a significant, if not all, of the PPP proceeds be forgiven.
Yeah, so the restated, just for my own clarification, the application is payroll, average monthly payroll for a 4-month or 4-quarter period times 2.5. So it's based only on payroll. But the forgiveness piece during that 8 weeks, 75% of it has to be payroll. And then the other 25 or less could be rent and utilities, interest payments, Yes. So you're absolutely right. Thanks for that clarification, Frank. The calculation on 2.5 times is payroll only, but the forgiveness portion over the 8 weeks expands beyond payroll. And your lender and your accountant will definitely know those answers when you reach out to them for clarification on your unique situation. More questions, Courtney?
Yes. So I just got one in. Someone texted me.
I know, me too.
Did you get the same one?
No,
About
different.
someone quitting. So they had already applied for the PPP, but one of their employees is actually quitting to go do something else. How will that affect the PPP loan forgiveness?
Mark?
Okay, so there's going to be a calculation that's performed with respect to the full-time equivalent employees that they have on payroll. So it's going to be based on the figures that you report when you submit your loan application, and that loan application is going to say what your average number of full-time equivalent employees is. So, you know, let's make up a number. Let's say that number is 5. I have 5 employees, 5 equivalent full-time employees. Now somebody quits and leaves, and you know, now I have 4. Well, am I going to rehire somebody because that could certainly replace that payroll that I'm paying? But if I don't replace that payroll that I'm paying, in other words, I don't hire somebody else to replace that person that just left, there is a look back, and they will analyze it to determine how much of your loan can be forgiven, and it's based on a percentage of how many of your full-time equivalents you retained over that 8-week period. So it could negatively affect the loan forgiveness. The long and the short of it is it could negatively affect it, but you are certainly eligible to hire somebody during that period and bring that number back up.
But Mark, I mean, the point of this is it could negatively impact it, but you weren't paying the payroll during that time.
Right.
The person that left. So
that's correct.
Yeah,
That's right.
The spirit of this is to to allow small businesses to maintain their employees through this time so they don't go on unemployment. I'm sure in the broad scheme of things, that's much better for the federal and state governments for something like that to happen, for our economy and for the unemployment system. So yeah, just remember, if your forgiveness goes down because you laid some people off or they left, you didn't have that cost anyway. So it's really not a bad thing.
Okay, Dana asked, can we accept the loans and still get unemployment?
Yeah, I didn't think so either. Jockey, you're saying
He's
no?
shaking his head no.
No,
Does
you
it
can't
defeat the
get
purpose?
PPP and unemployment. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that brings up a point. If you don't have anything, 2 things. If you are concerned about your employees going someplace else after this is all done, then the PPP is probably a good strategy. If your employees need the health benefits and you lay them off or furlough them, that can be a consideration. But I don't think that you should just keep people on right now just to have them on the payroll. They need things to do, and you need to make sure you have things for them to do. Then there's this whole psychological thing where someone's getting paid their full amount, but they're not working full time. What does that do to the other employees, which, you know, goes beyond the nuts and bolts and the dollars of this thing, but it is a consideration. And Mark is smiling for some reason.
But what we learned last week, especially from Bill McMahon from Lincoln Inn and Jeff Dobie from Fatty's, this is a great opportunity to do those projects and do those things around your organization that, you know what, if you're redoing your floors, there's never a good time in a retail business to redo your floors. Now's the time. So you might be able to keep some staff around and do those repair projects, those projects that have just been put off for a while, or the thing that's going to make your business move forward to the next level. This is a great opportunity to be able to do that. Hey, there was a question here, and I want to make sure we did cover it because I don't remember. It was a question about the clarification on the SBA form. I do want to just be clear that the SBA form we keep referring to is the Paycheck Protection Program Borrower Application Form. And it is SBA Form 2483 dated 4/20. That is the latest form from the SBA.
420 or 42?
4 slash, well, it's 2020, I assume is what they're saying.
Oh, okay, all right. I see.
It is 404/20.
Yeah. It was updated the Thursday or Friday right before they started accepting applications.
Okay, we have a question from Vicky. What happens if there were pay cuts? Is PPP based on original pay, and does that employee get more monies cut retroed?
So Mark, I think if payroll gets cut, then your reimbursement is going to be for the amount that you spent on payroll. So it would be reduced based off of the calculation that you originally made when you submitted, correct?
It's based on your 12, all right, so the base period that they're looking at is the 12-month period, right? So, so if what Vicky is asking is, I cut payroll and am I eligible to receive the full loan forgiveness? The answer is going to be no. However, if you restore the payroll during that 8-week window, because again, everything is we're looking at that 8-week window following the loan origination date. So if she restores the payroll, then absolutely all of that payroll is eligible for the loan forgiveness. If she doesn't restore the payroll and she has less, then a portion could be reduced. A portion of what she gets as loan forgiveness could be reduced. Okay, I see her response. So I think we're good.
She said, perfect, I'm glad you understood. So thanks for that. We hire temps from a temp service that averages about $9,000 a month. Can we consider this as part of payroll for the forgiveness accountability?
Yes.
All right. So if they're paying through a temp service, I guess I want to clarify. I believe what they're saying there is they're paying a subcontractor. And if they are paying a subcontractor, subcontractors do not qualify as payroll for that purpose. If instead they hire them on and are considered employees and they pay them a wage, W-2 wages, then it would qualify. But as the question is written, it looks like they're paying them as a subcontractor, and that does not qualify.
Hey, how about just clarification too on the PPP program? And Frank, maybe you can answer this. My understanding is there is no personal guarantee, right? And no collateral required for the payroll protection program, paycheck protection program, sorry.
That's correct, with one exception, and that's for you.
Thanks, man. Hey, Mark, I think you covered it, and I'd be curious from both of you, actually. You said it, I think, in the beginning, but for my own benefit, I just want to hear it again. Any thoughts or strategies on, once the money is in my account, keeping track of it in a way that is going to help me when it comes time for the verification of what I use those funds for?
I have had clients indicate that they'd like to set up a separate checking account, and any time that payments are made, they would issue payments out of that checking account to make sure that there's a good trail, good audit trail to be able to trace that money and those funds. One of the complexities with that is generally your payroll is coming out of a different account, so you'd be pushing money to the payroll account still. So it's not a perfect science, but I think that isn't a bad idea to make sure that you're tracking and tracing all of the monies that are being paid out. So that's not a bad method. Again, it's all about documentation and making sure that your books are in good order and keeping good track. And in this case, Chucks, it's imperative that you're spending time currently keeping up with your books. I have far too many clients that do their books a little bit after the fact. We don't do that here. It's very important that we keep current so that we have a finger on the pulse of where are we with respect to that loan forgiveness. And by all means, reach out to your accountant to get feedback and advice, and reach out to your lender. Your lenders are a great resource.
How about you, Frank? Any thoughts on that?
No, just a big picture of, you know, you get 8 weeks to cover, and I'd start the day you get the money or the day you get SBA approval to begin either by yourself or with your CPA to begin to walk through the infrastructure you're going to build and the documentation you're going to maintain to support your request for forgiveness. Because I just think that you're going to start, and then after, you know, maybe the first payroll, you're going to want to tweak it or whatever. So again, I just encourage you to begin thinking about this, making sure you understand kind of the rules of the game, and then you work again with your accountant, whoever your trusted advisor, to come up with okay, maybe you're 2 weeks into this, I'm making this up. You started, you ran a payroll, you realize, boy, I'd like to keep track of this a little bit different. I want to include this, whatever the deal is. Start now, because 8 weeks is going to be here before you know it. It's going to be very difficult to go back and put all of this information you're going to keep and put it into a format that, you know, frankly, you're more than likely going to wish you would have done at the very beginning. So I totally agree with Mark. Start today, just thinking about how you're going to document and be able to make your case to your bank to seek forgiveness. But understand too, there is still more guidance to come as it relates to kind of the rules around forgiveness and how that's supposed to be looked at. So
I know I'm definitely going to be one, and I'm just anal that way, where I will have a separate account. And when I make payroll, and I know I'm making it out of this account, like you said, Mark, I'm going to transfer that exact dollar amount into the main account. And I'm just going to have a complete record for utilities, rent, and payroll costs. Having gone through audits before, even if it's overkill, the cleaner you make something, it just seems the better, especially if it's a year or two later. Memories fade over time. All right. Oh, Courtney, we had one more. Yes?
Sorry, unmuting myself. Yeah, one last question. When does the clock start ticking? What are the dates that the PPP applies to?
How are you, Frank?
Oh, sorry. My understanding is it's the date starts clicking the date of your note. You got 8 weeks from the date of the note.
Yep. So once your loan is approved through your lender and money is being transferred to your account, that's when the clock starts ticking. All right, we've got no other questions. Any closing comments, Frank or Mark, parting wisdom? I'm sure we're gonna rope you guys back into another session here in the future, just because it's great information, and there's obviously, you can see there's so many questions that people have, and as much as we can get those answers in front of them, part of what Lynettes is trying to do is also relieve some of the anxiety out there for all the small businesses and nonprofits that are struggling during this time. And just getting answers to questions, something as simple as that, can help achieve that mission. So any parting words at all? Frank, I'll let you go first.
No, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
You bet. Mark?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank DeKalb County Lynettes for all that they're doing to keep the community informed and educated along the way. There's just been a nonstop barrage of information and things happening. I think it's a wonderful thing that you're doing, so thank you. Glad to be a part of it.
Appreciate it. Sorry for the noise. I'm right on Lincoln Highway, if you guys can hear that. Okay, as we wrap up here, I wanted to remind everyone that this session will be recorded. We will have it posted on our website by tonight, so it's going to be there. Please share out to as many people as you know that you think could benefit from this information. Our whole goal here is to inform. So let's try and inform as many small businesses as possible out there. Reminder, we have webinars every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 2 o'clock. All the agendas are posted on the website. The speakers are posted on the website. And this week we've got a pretty darn exciting lineup. I don't know if you wanted to tell them really quick, Courtney, who's coming up on Wednesday and Friday?
Sure. So Wednesday we have an HR focus. We have Lucretia Cohen from Kishwaukee College, and two, I don't have it up here right in front of me, but thanks, from the IDES. And then on Friday, we have Representative Jeff Kiker coming on. Brad McConnell,
Oh yeah, Brad McConnell.
from Axion will be here, as well as 2 representatives from the DCEO. So answering all kinds of grant questions. Go ahead, go on.
No, I was just say, yeah, absolutely. So there's just going to be a lot of great content, a lot of great speakers. So be sure and stay tuned. I know there's going to be topics and questions that are going to apply to just about everyone on this call today. So that's it. Reminder, DeKalb County. Yeah.
The speaker on Friday from Axion. Axion is actually the company that is doing the state employment disaster loans. So he's going to give you a bird's eye view on how they're funding and those kinds of things.
Excellent. Thanks, Jock. So again, DeKalbCountyUnites.com. You can go there. You can see the upcoming webinars. There's links to be able to register for those as well. If you have any questions, DeKalbCountyUnites.com. Go to contact us, reach out, ask the questions, and we'll do our darndest to get you the answers that you need. I definitely wanted to thank Jock Somizi for coming on. He's part of the SBDC. Jock has been invaluable for all of us, getting contacts with people that we need or answers that we need. Jock, I gotta say from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thanks, Courtney Strohacker, sorry, for just facilitating as always. It's just wonderful to have that additional help to get us through this. And then, of course, Mark Kerman and Frank Roberts for once again coming on and helping us out. So with that, DeKalbCountyUnites.com, and hopefully we'll see you all this Wednesday at 2 p.m. Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful week.